2016, and I think we have enough people here to get going. Interesting agenda today, but let's get going with a stand-up first off. So in order in the doc, is Ben Nordhaus here?
No, it's Nikita should go first.
Okay, Nikita.
It's nothing too significant, like some comments and reviews as usual. Next is Colin.
So I reviewed issues and pull requests and opened a couple PRs around testing, documentation, and fixed a bug with the debugger. Next is Evan.
Sorry. So I submitted a doc and util pull request. Been working on an HTTP bug. Been trying to help some of the packages in the community get updated to v6. Some of the native packages. Few issues here and there, and then just been working on this commit validator tool that can hopefully get that to be more uniform. Next is Jeremiah.
Hey. Hello? We can hear you, Stephen. We're in stand-up. So I don't actually remember if we had a CTC meeting last week, but I did a bunch of stuff for v6, including a breaking changes doc from that. This week I've worked on a couple of sorted things, partially cleaning up a bit of a mess I made with trying to get unrefed handles to have a check on them that you could actually check from JavaScript, but I don't remember what else significant right now. I'm working towards the v6.1.0 release though. Next is James.
I worked on the v6 release last week, investigating a couple of regressions from that, one of which we have on our agenda to discuss today. Fixed a couple of bugs in util inspect, have to do with proxy objects and array length. Troubleshooting some other stuff. We have a regression in buffer index of and last index of that apparently traces all the way back to v4. Working on error code, refactoring, constants refactoring, changelog refactoring, some additional items, and then got it. Josh?
Yep. Dealing with some stuff here at Microsoft, but also working on the diagnostics work, which I started a couple weeks ago. Actually digging into some of the tracing stuff, trace event, to prepare for some discussion there. Next is Michael Dawson, apparently. Thanks, Reg.
Okay, I spent some time investigating issues on the PPC-BE release machine. Turned out to be more of a general issue with the release job configuration. Now working to validate the build that we did get generated from the release job for nightly for Big Endian. Sometime participating in the async wrap BP review. I switched over the benchmarking builds to actually run off the new v6 branch as opposed to master, now that 6 was out. I wrote and submitted the stable ABI module EP along with Stefan and Ian, and miscellaneous reviewing and landing. And next is Brian White.
Mostly worked on refactoring the HTTP server code and some other miscellaneous HTTP performance improvements. Other than that, just the normal reviewing PRs and issues. Next is Rodvag.
I have been taking time off, and this week I have been attempting to catch back up again, but as you all know, that's a job in itself, so that's been my week. Next is Seth Thompson.
Hey guys, let's see. The main updates on this end are actually Ollie is visiting the V8 team in Munich this week, which is, I believe, why he's not on the call right now. Continuing to figure out how best to create a process for floating back patches or patches if we need to on old V8 branches, and basically improve our waterfall coverage of Node. And meanwhile, the DevTools team is continuing work on getting the V8 inspector working directly with Node. Yeah, that's those are the main updates on our end.
Next is Shecky.
I'm working on the assessment and upgrading OpenSSL and reviewing one PR for the GCMIV. And next is Stevens.
So I worked on a couple of PRs that I have open. One is for checking in ICU into master, and the other is the V8 break iterator to throw instead of crash. And I'll also open a poll to get the international working group going again. We're going to try to get it to go kind of on a monthly cadence. And next is Trevor.
Right now I'm working on a PR so that Unwrap never reports. Because right now we're doing a lot of unverified accesses. And also the async wrap EP, I've been reviewing comments and tuning it. I haven't responded to anybody yet, but I have been reading it. And I do plan on responding as soon as I formulate appropriate responses. Also, while writing it, I realized there were a couple flaws, like the PR I previously mentioned, that are bug fixes that need to be fixed regardless of the EP itself. So I've also been working on those. Next is Rich.
I added some undocumented for now, or one undocumented for now, flag to tools.js, lint.js to automatically fix issues that are automatically fixable. I've been dogfooding it myself. If anybody else wants to give it a shot, please do. And I also opened a PR in the last 24 hours to run the known issues through CI. I think Jeremiah discovered that it was not being run in CI, and so got that happening. Please take a look. And other than that, just been doing the usual picking off long dormant issues and trying to see if they can be closed or fixed quickly or labeled something helpful or whatever. Bradley, I guess, would be next, unless, yes, Bradley is next.
So we merged the modules EP last week, and I wasn't at the CTC due to travel. Just been watching the response to that. As expected, there's kind of discussion both ways on it. Started making a test suite to ensure whoever tool-wise creates a shim for it will comply with it. And looked at the main counter proposal that popped up after we merged the EP. So that's about it. We'll discuss more later.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We also have Brian Telson here from Microsoft/TC39, who I believe will be joining us for some of the modules discussion. We won't make you do a stand-up. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Sorry. Let's do a quick review of last meeting, which was a couple of weeks ago. We added new collaborators, issue number 6282. That was just looking at the list to sanity check the list. Issue number 6161 was adding a doc-only deprecation for util.log. The issue number 6088 was checking in small ICU into the repo. What's that one, Stephen? Have we done that?
So that is clean. The CI is clean on that. I rebased it yesterday, I guess, and it finished the build, so it's clean. Thank you to lots of people. Thank you for Joa and others for fixing the cross-platform issues. So we actually should be able to. So it's ready to go in. I don't know if there's any. I have looks good to me from James. On the I guess on the V8 one. Any other comments on the ICU one? Any other? Is there a reason not to go ahead and merge it?
I think most of that can be dealt with on GitHub. We just need to sign off, and that's it, I guess.
Well, please,
Thanks
please
for
take a look at it if you have any questions or concerns about it. And if I can get some LGTMs, I'll go ahead and merge that. Same with the V8
Thanks for the
break iterator one.
Okay, issue number 6063, which was deprecating create secure pair. I think that went ahead. Planning for V6, which was 5766. We did the legal thing, which I think we skipped. Introducing staging branch for stable release streams. Did we actually get to discussing that? I don't remember the outcome of that. And the ES6 modules discussion again, which I don't think we got very far without Bradley. Okay. Anything arising from that anyone wants to talk about before we move on?
Arising.
No. Okay.
From what exactly?
From the last meeting. It's fine. We'll move on. If anyone has anything to add, historically, that's fine. We can back up. So let's move on to issue number 6537, which is about reverting 5950. This is a regression that we didn't pick up. James, you better describe this one.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. A bug was fixed in the module loader with regards to locating sim-linked peer dependencies. Unfortunately, none of our CI or SitGem testing or picked up on the fact that this broke a few other things. Just to go ahead and revert to get it back to where we were and take another run at solving the problem. Addressing the symlink peer dependency is a non-trivial fix at this point, so I think reverting is the best option to move forward. And if you note that the revert commit also includes 2 additional test cases, one of which goes into the known issues, actually 3 additional at this point. One that goes into the known issues to catch the symlink peer dependency problem, and the others to add new tests that'll catch the regression.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should revert it, just because I don't think that we say that the module system is locked, and when we actually break people's workflow, I don't think we should, or I think we should try and avoid doing that. So I think until we can find another solution, reverting it would be a good thing.
That's certainly my take too. In a case like this, we should revert, and then we have more time to fix it properly.
I think there was some discussion about whether it should be semver major for a revert, but is everyone comfortable with doing a revert as a bug fix?
If we make the revert a semver major, then that puts us not being able to actually deliver the revert until next October, which doesn't make sense. The regression is in 6. It needs to be reverted in 6.
That's
is it
not exactly the best thing to be doing per se, but it might be what we have to. I mean, we should definitely avoid as much as possible in the future. Like if we're landing a breaking change like this, we need to kind of make sure that we don't then need to revert it as a breaking change.
I think it's a long timeline with GitHub is being slow. I did 5950 land before or after 6 was cut.
Before?
Okay, so it landed pre.
It was a December major change.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
and reverting it is technically a December major change.
Yeah, sure.
But we might have.
It's breaking, right?
Yes.
So regardless, I mean, we are breaking things. So regardless of whether it's a major change to revert, it's like, well, we're reverting a major breaking change. I don't see how that's an issue, especially if the net itself occurred within the same major branch that in which it's being reverted.
Okay, so the question is, does anyone here have an objection to a revert at this stage, early stage of version 6?
Quick question. I believe some of the behavior that was changed is actually kind of useful. So is there any remote path forward to actually getting this to work in a future version without having huge backwards compatibility consequences?
I can
There's
just
a couple
speak
There's a
up.
couple paths forward that are being investigated. Some have various degrees of invasiveness on the module. Probably the least invasive would be to put the new behavior behind a flag, a command line flag, that when turned on, it switches to the new behavior. But by default, it uses the old behavior. The other changes from there involve a variety of different hacks. The folks that have been on both sides of this discussion, I kind of directed the discussion last week to see if we can get these folks together to come up with a joint solution, and they started putting their heads together and came up with a number of possible approaches that are being investigated. It's still too early right now to see if to have a real clear path, but probably putting it behind a flag is probably the easiest thing to do.
Is a flag then something we can consider putting back into V6 so that anyone who tried to have this functionality, it would still work for them?
Yep. I have not implemented the flag yet, but it's something I could work on over the next few days.
Flag
Sounds like a way.
to me.
Sounds like a good way forward if people really want that functionality.
And the folks that were really asking for this fix to be made, at this point, they are in agreement that going ahead and reverting and then finding another approach is the best thing. So even those that were looking for and depending on this, understand the situation.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, I think we've got agreement there. Okay, so next is I've moved up the discussion for the for modules, the EP for ES modules, just so we can not take up time for people that are here just for that. So that's issue. No, it's not an issue. It's titled a request for discussion of Dave Herman's defense of .js versus the EPS on modules. Bradley, do you want to tell us the current status of this and what we should discuss?
Sure. So, like I said earlier, we merged our proposal last week. After we merged the proposal, a counter proposal that we'd been waiting on for weeks and weeks showed up, which is good. The proposal is a package.json based approach, which we've discussed before. This proposal is a little more complete than the ones we'd seen before. It does address all the major use cases of Node. And it does so in a little different ways than what we've seen before. So it's still lacking a few behaviors of the existing CommonJS files. You can't detect all the file paths that you could from CommonJS. Notably, things like if you put configuration files in your home directory, npm has an example of this. Those generally would not be available to become ES modules. It does fix the inner package required by introducing a path expansion mechanism. Basically, the idea is you add a module.root to your package JSON, and that would expand your package from, say, Lodash and wherever that lives on the file system to Lodash/dist/wherever. So they solved it via path expansion. There's been various ups and downs on social media about it. I still have concerns about it, but it's definitely much better than the previous ones. I don't really see much technical advantage to it except for keeping the file extension. There are still some cons. There are some odd remarks in the proposal itself that I won't go into detail, but I was just trying to grade it on technical pros and cons. There's some claims that the workflows we're concerned about are not important. Some of those workflows are things like symlinks and modules, so that's a little awkward to talk about right after that. But like I said, it does address all the major use cases of Node. I'm probably going to have a more in-depth discussion with Brian Turleson about this. If anybody has any desire for really in-depth content on comparing the two proposals, I can go into it now, but I figured I would just kind of leave that in the air.
So if their proposal covers the major concerns, does ours cover more than the major concerns? Just the major concerns?
Covers pretty much all the use cases for CommonJS modules right now. All the basic ways to create a CommonJS module, you'd be able to create an ES module. Theirs requires a package JSON, and it isn't always feasible with existing workflows to introduce a package JSON. We've talked before about how some asset pipelines like Rails really want you only to use the file extension. There are some other scripting and tooling issues we've talked about before. And just some existing workflows are flat shared directories from multiple scripts or don't have package JSONs. These actually aren't the biggest use case for Node, but they're well-known use cases that we've seen in the wild. There is some collision as well with file names on their proposal. They're proposing, instead of index.js, a module.js entry point. That's actually a really minor collision. So I don't know. It's a lot of these don't break too much put together makes me worried. Yeah, that's what I would sum it up as.
So is the main downside of the file extension just if people start sharing the code and want to share it from servers that might not have rules currently enabled that allow them to do stuff with .mjs files to say serve them to browsers or something? Because that's what it's sounding like.
Yes. The main concern is things like firewalls would be blocking transmission. However, like we've looked at HTTP rewrite rules can jump around that. Most file servers and things won't be affected. Browsers are unaffected. So it's really these like in-betweens that are the concern for the file thing. There's also a lot of terms being passed around which are non-technical, so I've avoided them, but they're things like defense, beloved.
I share little to no sentiment for file extensions.
That's fine. I don't really.
Yeah, so I'd like us to dig into this a bit more because I keep on hearing this sentimentality towards the file extension. What are the objective reasons that we should be concerned about file extensions? That's what I'm not hearing. And like you mentioned some stuff about file server configurations. It's not like we haven't had to do this stuff in the past, but can you help us try and empathize with some of these concerns about file extensions? Because that's the main difference that I'm seeing. We're just not we're unable to be sentimental about it, and if there's objective reasons to take it into account, then let's hear them. But
there are concerns mostly around people directly requiring files between packages. So for example, some people, one of our problems was require /core, and some people are requiring directly /core.js. Those people could break if Lodash migrated to new file extensions and Lodash did not introduce a proxy script that we put in the EPS. So there is some concerns there. There's another concern about how to phrase that. Just the tool uptake time and how tools will be broken. Largely when going and talking to Babel, Rollup, some code editors, Rails asset pipeline directly, they will implement it long before we land anything, so I don't know. And then there was the original complaint that like shell scripts using star.js wouldn't find the new file extension. So those are about all I can think of. Which, like, if you want to go into gritty details, we can go into all the gritty details of the package JSON approach too.
I think the
it
only
seems to
thing
me that I'm sorry, Brian, go ahead.
The only thing that I would add, I think, is that there is a expectation, I guess, that JavaScript is contained in a JS file, and we're kind of in a nice place now that all JavaScript goes in JS files with some minor exceptions. This would be a rather huge exception for that, so it's yet another concept that people have to be aware of when they're developing in this ecosystem. For TypeScript, it kind of becomes like I guess we'd have to add an MTS file extension and a .mtsx file extension, and then hopefully that combinatorial thing won't explode any further.
So we're not suggesting.
But
go ahead,
Brian. You do understand that like we've been given a totally new file loading target here. Like we're expected to load modules which are completely different to scripts within the one format here. So it's not like I mean, we don't want to have to introduce a new file extension, but the module's proposal or the module's spec has decided to introduce a totally new target. So, I mean, the thing I'm struggling with here is we just want to make it work for users as smoothly as possible. Are there really big enough objective reasons to be sentimental about .js? And I'm not seeing it other than, we love our .js ecosystem. And is that a good enough reason?
I think that's a mischaracterization of the in defense of .js. I don't think there's any sentimentality there. I think it's a viewpoint, I guess, on the sort of friction that that developers would face with a new file extension. So I totally understand, that you have these constraints. Well, I shouldn't say totally. I've read a lot, but certainly not everything. So I'm only just trying to illustrate what their perspective is. I didn't actually write that document either, but hopefully that helps.
Keep in mind, though, that if we don't go the file extension way, then people are going to have to track extra properties detached from the files in a package JSON somewhere else. I mean, the only way it can be in the same files is if we have like a pragma at the top, which means we need to double parse the file, and that's already been rejected for performance and related reasons. So, I mean, there's going to be kind of developer friction either way. I'm not really sure how to avoid that.
What's the status of the spec?
But the nice part, I guess, in my perspective, of the sort of package.json counter proposal is that the friction is limited to Node users as opposed to eventually becoming a thing where JavaScript has two extensions.
It'd be nice if this was thought of beforehand.
I think,
what is the status of the spec? And I presume it's moving through browsers now, so that there's no option to change anything about the spec.
So we actually changed the EP to match some loading mechanics for browsers. The module resolution, the path resolution, is pretty much standardized. It's actually landed in the HTML spec. The loader registry is not standardized yet. Unknown when that's going to land. It still mutates from time to time, but it's mostly stable. As for the ECMAScript spec itself, there was discussions a couple months ago about changing it slightly, but it looks like it's pretty much locked. Eventually, there'll be something like require where you can dynamically import paths, but that's a ways away.
So many of these scenarios were considered as part of the initial module design. So I don't think it's correct to say that, it would be nice if this kind of stuff was considered. Like we have been thinking about this kind of stuff on the committee side for a number of years now. But if I don't think spec changes are off the table here. Like I think if TC39 is as a group is hesitant to have a separate file extension for whatever reason, I think that's a good reason to ask, well, can we make some spec changes to address those pain points? We're kind of saved by the fact that modules aren't broadly implemented yet in browsers or of course in Node. So I wouldn't say that anything is off the table. Like if you have ideas for how the spec could change to improve matters, then we should bring those up I'm not promising anything, of course. It might be too late depending on what the proposal is, but don't feel like you shouldn't bring it up because we're so late in the process or whatever.
So I think to not have the situation we're in, we'd more or less need to not have it require having two separate parsings. Am I understanding this correctly?
It's the forward detection we have a problem with, which is in part due to separate parsing, part due to a different bootstrap we need to include. Instead of the function scope, we actually are going to be using an import statement, and in part due to runtime semantics changing but not causing errors. So it's a multitude of things. I've got examples of all of them lying around. Basically, as long as implicit strict mode is enforced, we're going to have a really tough time without forward detection. And so the two proposals are basically just different ways to forward detect it. Nobody's really argued anything about basic path resolution. They've not argued about the interop wrappers we have for the different spec objects being emulated. It's just this forward detection is an issue, because it sounds like from everything I've read, there was an expectation always that either there wouldn't be interop, or the interop would be done in a way that was configured out of band, so not in the source file or related metadata to the source file itself. But that's a lot of hearsay. A lot of the TC39 notes are a little old.
So what's the path forward on this, Bradley? My reading of our previous discussions on this is that on our side, there's very little interest in investing more in the package JSON format and doing double file loading to get to a single file. And so there was a strong preference for the file extension. I guess, if compelling reasons were presented, then people would change their minds. But what do you see as the path forward for Node on this one?
How
do we make progress?
I've made this statement a couple times. Either way we integrate it, it has ecosystem effects. Basically, I personally am towards file extension. It's rudimentary, it's ugly a little bit, but most people on social media either go with, well, it's better than nothing, or okay. There are a lot of things about people disliking that there is a new file extension, but not a lot of yay, configure it in package JSON also. So it's convention versus configuration at this point, and I'm just kind of voting on convention because configuration is a little error prone, I think, in this realm.
So I guess in next steps, you're going to have a chat with Brian and I think someone else at Microsoft. That's open to anyone here that wants to dig deeper into it. Is there anyone here that would like to go further? If we
kind
could
of
have,
interesting, but I don't know if I want to spend the time on it.
Yeah.
I don't know
If
if I
there
have
are
an
CTC
understanding that's enough to be of any use. So
if there are any CTC members that would like to tag along to that, it'd be really good to get someone else caring about this more deeply.
okay, I guess that's me.
I'm sorry, Jeremiah. Okay. Is there anything else to add to that before we move on? I guess the status is that the EP is not fine. Does not mean it's absolutely final for Node. It's our preferred way of going forward, but it doesn't mean it can't change if there are compelling reasons to do so. But I think convincing this group to change is, I think, will first require convincing Bradley to change, and then just coming up with good technical reasons to do double file loading. So, yeah, Bradley, thanks for championing this and then putting in all the hard yards. Keep us informed and let us know where we can drop in and be informed and offer opinions.
Sure. We'll probably need to do a longer discussion either way in the next week or two once we start pushing out test suite stuff.
Yay. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay. Thanks everyone for that. Issue number 6534, which is deprecating require constants, which is a undocumented feature. James, this is you. You want to take it away?
Yeah, we had a recent PR looking to add a new constant. There was a discussion of, the fact that constants really aren't even documented very well, but we have them. We mention them in a couple places in the docs, but don't say anything about the stability of that or anything else. Figured it'd be a good idea to just go ahead and get them documented. So I took a first run at it. Guys looking at how the constants were organized and say, well, this really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So let's see if I can get a little bit better structure to it. What the PR basically does is, instead of having a require constants with a whole bunch of things just kind of jammed in there, it kind of logically separates it out. Things like OS specific related constants for like error messages and Windows specific error messages and signals are dropped off of os.constants. File system related ones are dropped off of fs.constants, and crypto related ones are crypto.constants. Under the covers at the native binding level, it's just a slightly different structure there. Instead of dropping them all on one object, kind of structure them out a little bit. Aside from just making the structure a little more logical, it actually allows us to make a couple of minor improvements in the code. For example, right now when we want to check to see if we have a valid signal, in one case when we're in child process, any currently defined constant can actually be would pass the check as a valid signal, which is fine. And then in another place when we were checking signals, we were a little hack for checking to make sure that the key started with SIG before it could actually do the lookup. This kind of reorganizes it so the signals things are all just kind of grouped together, and nothing else is on there. So it makes the code a little cleaner. And it actually adds proper documentation for the constants. That's still in the process of going through and filling out. It's quite a bit of detail to kind of slog through. But really the discussion is, we want to go ahead and do this. And if we did, would this actually be a sum or major? Because we've never actually documented require constants. And this change doesn't actually stop require constants from continuing to work. It would be a soft deprecation only. So anybody that's currently using require constants would not see any change.
So I marked this as a major because it said it was deprecating the constants, and I thought that meant that it was doing it in, like, it actually putting out a warning since it was not since it wasn't documented before. Where's the deprecation actually documented in this? I can't find it.
There was nowhere to document it because it's not documented at all.
There's no deprecation really.
Oh.
No. Yeah. It's deprecating in the sense that we're providing an alternative, but since we have nowhere to indicate that it's deprecated because it was never documented in the first place, the only other option would be to do a hard deprecation. And I did that at first just to run a test, and pretty much everything blew up because npm uses require constants, and ESLint uses require constants, and quite a few others. So adding a warning just doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Okay. We should try to find a way to document that, I guess. Some for minor. Otherwise.
So this adds new constants, adds them actually into the documentation. What I would say is, if we did decide to go ahead and land this, we add a release note that says require constants is still there, but you can go, please go use these other things instead.
Maybe we should just add a note under each of the constant sections in the docs that says previously this was in this requires constants thing that was private or undocumented.
Yeah, we could do that.
So it sounds like we're now talking about things that can probably be discussed in the GitHub issue itself, and we are kind of running out of time.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say that. Is there any objection here to deprecating?
To moving forward with this PR?
Well, the PR is bigger discussion. I guess, James, you're wanting the initial signal from us about stomach for deprecating.
Yeah, it's an extremely tedious amount of work to go through and document all these constants. So before I went and did all that, I want to make sure that there's consensus that yes, this is going in the right direction. I don't want to.
Yes, the constants should be documented.
Yeah, okay. I don't think it's hugely controversial, so let's move back to GitHub. Quickly then, this is a big one. Refactoring the changelog by version 6503. James, what have you done?
All right, so it's not what I've done, it's what everyone has done. The changelog grew up to such a point where it was no longer visible or usable on GitHub. You had to drop down to the raw mode in order to be able to see it. In order to make it at least visible last week for the release, Miles went ahead and just split it off into an archive as a temporary measure. What this does is actually for a long-term measure, reorganize the changelog into separate files by version with an index between them. If you look in that PR at the top, there is a link that you can click onto my branch that will show how it actually works in practice. In terms of the actual releases, so release notes, a blog post, when we link to the changelog, that would link to the individual changelog for that version. So V6 release would link to the V6 changelog. Right. So because of that, there'd be very little reason to actually have the latest release changelog in the root file. The root file just changes to an index. Here, if you want this version, go to this file, go to this link. Okay. It does break the existing links because Markdown and GitHub doesn't give us a way of redirecting. Unfortunately, I tried a number of different ways of trying to hack that in. None of them worked. So at this point, it's pretty much manual. There's links there that if you find yourself on the root page, you can click on it to follow through. It presents a much more logical structure, in my opinion. It's just a matter of, is this acceptable, or do we need to take a different approach?
You're putting the changelogs into docs/changelogs. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's nice. Rather
And
than
each
cluttering the root.
version stream would have its own. So there's a changelog v6, changelog v5, changelog v4, one for 0.10 and 0.12, and then a changelog archive for anything for all the IOJS releases and anything lower than v10 and v11. So. In terms of the work involved, when we actually do a release, it shouldn't add any real complexity to the release process. A couple more fields a couple more places to update in order to get the links, the indexes right. But it shouldn't make cherry picking those any more difficult.
I think I looked at it and I like how it looks. I think it's not near as confusing because you don't have like version 4.1.2 and then 5.9 and then another 4 after that. It kind of gives you a little bit more order. So I like that part of it for sure.
So just one note on the archive, we've put the IOJS stuff in there. It may be best to put the IOJS stuff in a separate file, simply because a lot of the stuff between v0.12 and v4 is in that list. So if you're looking for changes, then you can find a lot of details about what went on in the IOJS files. I.e., they're not as ancient history as archive might suggest.
Right. Also, for the IOJS v1, there's a really long changelog for that that covers a lot of things in particular.
Yeah. So the specific details of this, if there's any little nits or formatting things that need to be changed, we can discuss that in the GitHub repo. I just wanted to make sure that there were no objections to going down this route before I went through and did the even more tedious work of putting things out even further.
Okay, let's take it back to
Doesn't feel like there's any objection.
Dude, you love tedious work. That's what you live for.
To a degree. I love getting stuff done that needs to get done.
Okay, look, it's top of the hour. Let's move on. Let's take that discussion back to GitHub. If there's anyone strongly objecting, please do so on GitHub. Otherwise, James, I guess you can roll forward. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just quickly allow time for public Q&A via YouTube, IRC, or the GitHub issue for this meeting. Please, if you are tuned in, please drop a note there. We will wait a minute or two to allow people to catch up to that. Are there any existing questions from any of those channels that have come in beforehand?
No, we didn't advertise in IRC, but I did advertise on the live feed. And anyone who's actually watching this should see the live stream chat. I said we'll take Q&A at the end if anyone has questions. I think we should be good. Stream delay is not that long, so.
Okay. Doesn't sound like there's anything then. Let's close out so we can move on to productive work. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us. Next meeting will be the 11th. And thanks for Brian and Bradley for joining us as well.
Just one last quick question. Who normally posts the minutes? Should I go ahead and put them into GitHub, or what's the?
You can. It's normally me. I've got a backlog to work through. But if you would like to do this one,
I'm
you
happy
can
to
go
do
ahead.
this. Have it open, so.
Cool.
Okay. Should I open a PR or just?
Thanks, everyone. Open a PR.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do.
There's people will usually pick up grammar and other problems.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, bye.